Hi, everyone. I'm sorry that I'm a few minutes late. Hello, Oracle 11, Annette, Eli D, Daryl, ML, Celestial Wonders, Daryl Calhoun. I think I said Daryl already. Cindy Reinhart, hello. Eli D, Cecilia Amirati, A Touch of Class, John Stuart Mill, Delane Parole. Hi. Mark Williams, Mystic Earth, and Sherry. We missed you last night. We missed you. All right, guys. Echo Twin Systems, Space Indian, hello. Silent Walk, Stardust, Breenet, Air Supremacy, hi everyone. Just doing roll call here. Information Hungry, Terry Miller, Ida Hat, thanks Annette, Analog Synth Player, Marmalization, Amber Eyes, hi. Yeah, getting the channels terminated by YouTube messes up a whole lot. For me too, because I lose all of those people that I've been subscribed to. So since I was late, let me get right to weather. And California, man, is getting slammed. Big time. So, according to Daily Caller, 38 million Americans facing extreme risk of flash flooding in California. Do you know the population in California, last I looked, was 39 million. So, there you go. Pretty much the whole state is threatened with an extreme risk of flash flooding, and already Californians are experiencing it.
Several rivers rose quickly on Friday as a flood threat in the United States intensified, forcing thousands of people to leave their homes and causing property damage. In villages like Ponderosa and Springville, residents were compelled to escape right away due to flash floods brought on by the combination of recent atmospheric rivers' severe rainfall and preceding snowfall storms. In a rare flash flood emergency, the National Weather Service issued a warning for catastrophic water level rises in Tulare County, California. Many homes had water seeping inside them, and at least one residence partially collapsed as a result of the power of the rising water, as seen in Storm Chaser drone video. Almost 10,000 people were subject to evacuation orders throughout the state as river and creek levels continued to rise into the evening. The most recent wave of dangerous weather was blamed for at least 2 deaths, according to California Emergency Management, and more than half of the state's counties were declared to be in a state of emergency. Several crews from the California National Guard were sent to prepare for the possibility of more floods and river rises for at least the upcoming week. Due to additional rainfall expected over the weekend and the first few days of next week, the flood alerts for more than 20 million Californians will probably last into the near future.
We want to check in with Fox Weather's Max Gordon, who's live right now in Watsonville, California. And, you know, it's a 1-2 punch for so many, Max. We're dealing with one atmospheric river. You're showing us the sights and sounds of that, but there's another one on its heels.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not what California needs right now after all of this rain. We're here near Watsonville along the Pajaro River, where a flash flood warning is now in effect. This is being described as a life-threatening situation after a levee breached on the river. It seems like there's a National Guard truck that's driving through some of these floodwaters right here. After all this flooding, you know, it's been a situation where, you know, people have been wading through these floodwaters. They've been trying to get out of their homes. Just a really tough go for a lot of people on the Pajaro River after, you know, the waters began to rise and the levee breached. Here's one man who we spoke to earlier today. This is what he had to say about as he escaped his home.
A lot of people are gonna go home to nothing now. So why am I lose everything? The only thing I might have is on my back. 5 pairs of pants, so I'm losing everything. So I had to walk on the water. It was just like swimming, like 4 feet of water.
Now, this comes after massive amounts of rain fell in this area. One National Weather Service rain gauge even picked up more than a foot of rain over a 48-hour period. In Santa Cruz County, there have been mudslides, down trees, and down power lines. Thousands of people have had their power knocked out as utility crews work to get the lights back on, with around 50,000 people going without power during the height of the storm. Emergency management officials have confirmed at least 2 deaths due to this storm. This as another atmospheric river begins to hit California early next week. Really not what this state needs right now. Mike?
Yeah, I'd agree.
Northern and Central California are bearing the brunt of this storm. Rivers are overflowing their banks, roads have been washed out, and residents are being rescued after being trapped by the floodwaters. At least 2 people have died as a direct result of the storm. 25 million people are under flood alerts. Thousands more are without power tonight.
A state of emergency now in effect in 34 California counties because of the relentless rain and snow. Samantha Cortese live in our news center. She's got a look at the damage all across the state. Samantha?
From hungry cows to Tahoe avalanches to rushing rivers, we're seeing widespread impacts of this storm all throughout our state. In Santa Cruz County, an entire Watsonville neighborhood flooded Friday. Homes along a creek just couldn't handle the rain.
We got our garage flooded. A lot of mud came inside. We helped out the neighbors. All the street was very bad.
Sandbags and tarps didn't do much to stop this rushing water. The soil, already saturated, left nowhere for this rainwater to go.
Everything right here in front of the house, the whole street was flooded. Like there's at least a foot of water.
And look at this drone video from Sokol, a quaint town near Monterey Bay. The town's main street washed away by a creek. Officials say people are stranded. The collapse cut off access for people in nearby homes. You see heavy machinery working to clear debris and chunks of the road. And look at Highway 50 into Tahoe. It's a beautiful sight, but with all this rain, could turn dangerous fast. Caltrans worked in the dark overnight to clear the road following an avalanche. And there are concerns about the snow load, crushing homes and other buildings in Tahoe. Another foot of snow at least is expected as this storm moves on through. In Humboldt County, a dire situation for herds of cattle. Operation Hay Drop is underway. Several feet of deep snow and downed trees blocked ranchers from reaching their cows. CAL FIRE and the Coast Guard loaded up their helicopters and dropped hay into remote mountain fields populated by hungry cattle.
We won't really know until there's a snowmelt how many actual head has died off due to these conditions. But I know this for certain, if we don't act, there's gonna be way more that die, and it'll be a catastrophe for our county.
In Kernville, near Lake Isabella, evacuations are underway. Friday stormwater is overflowing the Kern River. It rose 17 feet, breaking a 50-year record. And this sounds a little oxymoronic, but in this record rainfall, Cal Waters is asking Kern County to conserve water. A water main is attached to a bridge, and if that bridge gets damaged, service may be stopped or interrupted. In News Center, Samantha Cortese, KTLA 5.
Well, interesting, a levee. Well, I think 2 levees have the water broken through. Not good. What do you think would happen if people started to open their mind to even have a conversation about weather modification? If they looked into all of their utility companies that are conducting weather modification operations, if they looked into their state governments and how much they pay for weather modification, and then all of the commercial companies that also are conducting weather modification operations. What do you think would happen if word got out finally and people really started asking questions, started talking about it, started screaming about it? I don't know. Either they would just continue on with what they're doing, or they might have to pull back a little. But I sure know what happens when we can't get through to people and hardly anybody is talking about it. So what happens? What you see in California. And the Northeast is not looking good either. Millions. Of course, this is, I'd say 3 or 4 times a week, I see headlines. Millions, 30 million, 20 million, 50 million threatened. Oh, it's life-threatening. It's high-impact nor'easter. The storm, one storm, and I've heard Ryan Hall and other YouTube meteorologists talking about how one storm is threatening most of the country, and it's going to move from the Midwest on up the Northeast, traverse the Midwest this weekend, and might become a nor'easter that travels up the East Coast. Doesn't that sound like one storm? Well, it's not one storm. And they did an update, so I should have, but I didn't. I should have captured this. Oh, come on. Yeah, they did their update. Okay. What I should have captured was 2 storms. 2 storms. One circling right around the Northeast, off the coast, and the other one, it's circling here in the Midwest, and that's 2 storms. They're going to bring in the nor'easter, which will dump about 1 to 2 feet of snow, New York on up. They are causing so much chaos with this weather. So China had a dump of worms. What? The citizens of a Chinese province, in China obviously, were told to find shelter after it looked like it started to rain worms. Okay. Officials say this can happen when animals are swept up by heavy winds or caught in a water spout. Okie dokie. Really? Well, 64 years on this planet, and that's not an experience I've ever had. It made it to the New York Post. Really. All right. Wiggly weather. The authorities have yet to reveal a reason. Okie dokie. All right, I'm going to just play a few minutes of this video, and I'm going to link to it in the chat. I hope you listen. You know, if everybody sat back and did nothing, well, nothing would happen. But there are a lot of people who are doing things.
Hello, everybody. Today I have with me two prominent Swiss citizens who are doing incredible things for humanity. First, I have Pascal Nejadi, a British-Swiss banker who is an advisor to heads of state. Sometime late last year, Pascal filed criminal charges against the Swiss president, and this matter has been turned over to the federal prosecution. And now, the latest news as of yesterday, Pascal has filed a lawsuit with the Supreme Court of the State of New York, United States of America, in Manhattan against Pfizer, Inc., New York, FDA, USA. The claim is based in lieu of pending criminal charges filed by Nejadi against the Swiss president, Alain Berset, in Switzerland on December 2nd, 2022.
Okay, that's all I can play on YouTube. I do hope that you watch it and you circulate it. Another video I'll play a few minutes of, and I'll put the link in the chat. The Last American Vagabond with Whitney Webb.
Welcome to The Last American Vagabond. Joining me today is Whitney Webb, here to discuss her new article, a very important article. We've talked about in the past about CIA and Mossad link surveillance systems, specifically Carbine 911, during our election special that Whitney and I did during 2020 discussions, and trying to predict, theorizing about where this would go, a lot of which actually came to pass. She recently came out with a new article in regard to a company called Gabriel, and this seems to be the continual extension, the creep of the pre-crime direction. So inviting her on to have a talk about this. Whitney Webb, how are you today?
Hey, doing well. Good to be back on TLAV as always.
Well, it's always a pleasure to have you. This is a good article too. I think that this is, as we were saying before, something that doesn't get enough attention. You know, I mean, really, as we've said many times before, to me, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it does make a difference, obviously, depending on what governments, some are worse than others, in my opinion, but really whatever government is having an outsized influence on policy or surveillance within another country, specifically, you know, the U.S. where I am residing, that makes me very uncomfortable. But specifically with the Israeli government and the history around what's been done in foreign policy and domestic, it makes me really concerned. So, start wherever you want, really. We can talk about what we talked about previously, or, just wherever you want to begin here, because this is a kind of a gigantic topic.
Yeah, it is a gigantic topic. So basically, I guess I'll just start off with the point that this is, as I see it, sort of a team up of CIA and Israeli intelligence, or American and Israeli intelligence. Maybe it's better to say. Mm-hmm. And if you look through the history, like, in the books I put out last year, for example, I talk a lot about how American intelligence and organized crime, they team up, and then the state of Israel's created not long after that. And a lot of the same organized crime figures that had teamed up with the CIA were really involved with arming the paramilitary groups that later create the state of Israel. And those groups, of course, turn into the Haganah, turn into the IDF and all of that. And so all of these same entities have been swimming around each other for a very long time. And then you have the CIA and Israeli intelligence collaborating in a lot of illicit activities and past intelligence linked scandals like Iran-Contra, for example, intimately involving both. Okay, so as we've talked about in the past pretty extensively, Iran-Contra is the period of time where the U.S. national security state arguably, they tried to do this a little bit before as well, but it became really obvious that they were trying to essentially create sort of a pre-crime system in the event of a vaguely defined national emergency as part of these continuity of government protocols, right? And this has always been very dependent on data mining. Even back then in the 80s, when the world wasn't nearly as digitized or as dependent on digital technologies as it is today. They were still, using what they could, the capabilities they had back then to profile people, decide if anyone might be a threat to the state in the event of one of these emergencies. And as we've talked about before, you could be put on that particular list for attending a protest, not paying your taxes on time. It didn't necessarily apply to people who were showing overt violence. It was, people who were essentially thought criminals and stuff back then.
Right.
And Israel was really involved with the development of that database. And a lot of this is intimately tied up with the Promise software scandal, which happened at around the same time. And of course, involved both Israeli and U.S. intelligence. And on the Israeli intelligence side, people may be familiar with Robert Maxwell's outsized involvement in that. But essentially, this was the same software used to profile dissidents. And that was one of the reasons that Robert Maxwell was selling the Promise software to all these countries around the world, specifically in Latin America, where they were using Promise as a means to sort of like supercharge their dissident elimination efforts as part of Operation Condor and things like that. So there's a long history of pre-crime in the U.S. and pretty much every time you follow how that's developed from, this point where I'm talking about in the 80s up until now, it's Israeli and American intelligence working together. So I just want to make that point really clear. Like, I'm not being like, this is all one guy and, our intelligence agencies are very much complicit in this. And it's been a collaborative thing for decades. So that's why it's important to sort of have that context. And the other thing too, and which I cite in the article, there was this article in the British Journal of Criminology that was basically trying to explain what pre-crime is, and it made a really salient point that basically what pre-crime is about is the merging of national security, i.e. intelligence agencies, with law enforcement and the criminal justice system. And basically, yes, this is a coup by intelligence agencies, and pre-crime has always been intended to be that. Essentially, that's why you have, again, back in the Iran-Contra, this was the U.S. national security state. This was the CIA or people on the National Security Council and people in military intelligence and things like that involved in these efforts. And as we've talked about again on the program before, these efforts, of course, happened a lot after 9/11, involving a lot of the same people, again, trying to get military intelligence or intelligence agencies through things like total information awareness, basically doing this exact same thing. And there's been different iterations of that. One, for example, being Palantir, sort of being an outgrowth of that's still around today and doing a lot of this predictive policing, pre-crime stuff. And a lot of these companies, whether they're founded by Israelis or founded by Americans, they share a lot of the same investors, the venture capital people, the same people on their boards. And it's pretty clear who's doing what and for what purpose, right? And I also want to say that some of my past reporting for TLAB as well on stuff like the WEF Partnership Against Cybercrime, which is also led by an Israeli military intelligence guy involved in a lot of the same circles that are actually in this article, that is all about trying to get national security agencies to fuse with the banks, the financial sector. So at the same time, just for context here, before we get into the specifics of this article, you have the national security state at the same time trying to take over both law enforcement and the banks. That's insane. And no one's talking about that. And I think a lot of people need to focus on these issues because it's a lot more than just a surveillance system. So like some people just read the headline and didn't read the article, right? And they're like, well, yeah, it's probably not good to have cameras watching your kids all the time, but you know, it's not that bad. No, because as we'll see here, this particular company, it's not just like cameras like that people have been using for decades to like watch stuff. These are smart cameras with a lot of different functionalities, and the goal is to basically automate responses. Or that's not even the right way to explain it. So I guess we should just probably get into the specifics of the article to sort of explain what the system is and why it's really should not be all over schools.
Well, yeah, it should not be all over schools, and I forgot to hit enter for the link, so let me delete this and put the link in again. There. If I don't hit enter within a particular amount of time, then it gets frozen. All right, so yeah. Very good interview. A whole lot is going on, and the tyranny in the United States is, well, a whole lot of it is rather insidious, and a whole lot of it is not so visible like other countries, but it doesn't mean it's not taking place like this. Unbelievable. All right, I want to get into schools.
Hello, my name is Taylor Brock. I'm a military spouse and a mother who loves her children more than anything in this world. Recently, my son appeared in a video that was seen by millions of people in the United States and around the globe. In this video, my son was not kicking the winning field goal, winning the spelling bee, or welcoming his father home from a deployment. My son was being strangled by a fellow student aboard his Fairfax County school bus. After being summarily dismissed by the school administration, I was forced to go to the police, report the crime, and was issued a protective order, which I gave to the school, that stated the girl who tried to kill my son was to remain 50 feet away from him at all times. Not only did the school not take this seriously, they didn't even tell my son's teachers, who were horrified to find out that a restraining order was even put in place. The judge who issued this restraining order was also shocked to hear that the girl was still in school. According to Fairfax County Schools, strangulation is a level F, category 5 offense, PD9, malicious wounding without a weapon, meaning the child who tried to strangle my son using her bare hands should be completely removed from the school, and a year-long expulsion should be considered immediately. Not only did you put my son's life in danger, you are putting other children's lives in danger by dismissing these violent acts. You say in your safety handbook, FCPS is committed to the consistent and equitable implementation of discipline policy, regulations, and practices across all schools and educational programs. But I say that it's completely false because you never protected my son, and the perpetrator that tried to strangle my son still remains in your school, while the victim of this crime, my son, was forced to leave his friends and transfer to another school because you ensured he was in a constant state of fear and trauma. Fairfax County Schools do not care about military families or the victims of violent crimes.
Unfortunately now, children, and because of CRT, white children are really not safe in school. You know, this is the video that she was talking about. My hunch is that some of you have seen it. And it is unbelievable that the school allows this student to remain in school and has not taken this seriously. But when your country becomes evil and has been evil for a very, very long time, no one is safe. No one is safe. All right, I'm just going to go through some of this quickly. Grassroots Army. I'm going to put the link to the channel. If you don't know this channel, I recommend subscribing because they are posting a lot of videos that people need to see and circulate for sure on what is happening with school boards. This is Michigan.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm Dr. Linda Lee Tarver. I have a doctorate in education and theology. I live in Lansing, and I'm not part of the Proud Boys. I was invited by family members here to speak about the issue with Keisha Hamilton, board member Keisha Hamilton. And as a correction, Madam President, a recall is one option, but you certainly have within the board the option to censure her for her remarks. And I would hope that you would consider that. This is Black History Month, and as a former Michigan Civil Rights Commissioner, words matter, and leadership matters with respect to words that are shared, especially in a community of color, as Jackson is. And I wanted to share a little bit about my history. I'm the youngest of 10. I grew up in Lansing. I currently live there. My parents, Wilbert Lee and Lillian Lee, were born in 1923 and 1924, respectfully. And so my father fought in World War II. He and my mother are buried at Fort Custer in Battle Creek. I share that because they knew racism and discrimination intimately. They came to Lansing, Michigan from Evergreen, Alabama, because my uncle was lynched by the Ku Klux Klan. So they fled Alabama, moved to Michigan. My father worked for Coca-Cola. He was a Teamster there. And my mother retired after so many years from the county as the first Black woman deputy sheriff of the Ingham County Sheriff's Department. She worked for 3 sheriffs. So my father and mother, I had seen them called the N-word. I've seen my father, as a grown man, of course, called a boy in my presence. They were treated like animals. They were restricted and not allowed to participate in a lot of different things until laws had changed. I was bused. My parents decided to participate in civil rights, and I was bused from the west side of Lansing to the east side of Lansing as part of integration in the late 1960s. I am younger than you think, I'm sure. I'm going to say that right now. But I was called the N-word by my middle school teacher. I had opportunities not afforded to me in my predominantly all-white school in Waverly, Lansing, Michigan, and Waverly schools. However, I know that my brothers, several of my brothers, married white women. I have biracial nieces and nephews, and my maternal mother was white. At no time did my parents refer to white people as animals. At no time did my parents call white people anything less than human beings. In no time in my presence did my parents call anyone out of their name. They were Christian folks. And despite what you're hearing about Christianity, yes, they were Christian folks who believed in the Word of God. I ask that Ms. Hamilton does not speak for Black people, and she should be censured for her remarks. And that is your Black History moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm not entirely sure what was spoken, but that board meeting had another person mention Miss or Mrs. Hamilton talking about the same thing.
The response is usually negative from that.
Instead of reflecting on that, you guys choose to gaslight, deflect, and blame us for causing tension and toxicity in the district. No, we're bringing awareness. There's a big difference. We don't summarize your words. We don't misrepresent your arguments. In many situations, we let you tell them your stance in your very own words. It's not our fault that so many people in this town are so unhappy with the things you guys are doing as a board. You keep trying to mischaracterize our intentions, which I get, really, I do. It's hard to get everyone to support your side if you told them the truth. That's why I'm so grateful you've made this easy for us. All we have to do is expose your views for what they are. It's not hard, and it doesn't require us having to manufacture anything radical. You provide us with plenty of material on a consistent basis. Like the 10-minute rant by Jan Kiger, where she waved her Bible around and then accused parents of shaming sexual assault victims into silence. All we did was share the video. And the interesting thing is that statement actually inspired some actual survivors from the community to come to meetings and tell you your stance on this was wrong, that you shouldn't use them as a reason these books should be in the schools. But the funny thing is, none of you mentioned that you changed your position on this after that, nor did you mention that perhaps we shouldn't have been accused of being victim shamers after all. No, you just stopped talking about it. Apparently, when you said you cared so much for sexual assault victims, you meant specifically the ones that agreed with you. Yet another accusation and manipulation of our position that has proven to be inaccurate. It has nothing more than a feeble attempt at deflecting from your misguided arguments. Seems since that didn't work out in your favor, you have decided to move on to yet another lie to try and discredit us. How about the accusation that we are inciting violence and that we encouraged people to send threatening messages? That was another deflection you've tried recently after you were humiliated with the videos of your actions going viral. But that didn't play well either, did it? So I noticed you're starting to change the language around that in the minutes. For example, the meeting minutes from the last meeting, this is how Secretary Heika chose to manipulate and misrepresent my public comment. Holly Valade commented on receiving threats herself and her belief that the board blamed commenters for the violent threats received by the board. All right, well, let's revisit that, shall we? Some of the words of yourself and your fellow board members in the past 2 months. Michelle Heika, difficult to compromise when the following language is thrown at you: disgusting, groomer, pervert. And once you reduce someone to something as horrific as a pervert or a groomer, it becomes very easy and incites some to physical threats. Also, Michelle Heika, stop with the hyperbole, name-calling, and incitement of violence. Carrie Macchio, there is no low that is too low. Attacks on teachers, public schools, board members, even students, as we've seen here tonight. So you tell me, were these statements all in my imagination, or did you all who made several comments that implied and accused us of inciting violence? Yet again, another abuse of power by this board misrepresenting us, which is, I guess, understandable that it's hard to remember everything you've said when you're constantly reinventing your position.
I am not sure where that was, but if you go to Grassroots Army, these videos are recent. I'm not sure where that was. But does it matter? Because we've heard the same thing. School board meetings, parents speaking up, saying essentially the same thing all over our nation. And I don't know why this is happening, but it is. Something is wrong with my mouse. So, yeah, we definitely have a problem. We've got evil that is really pretty big right now. It's in our face, and I love seeing things like this. I believe I got these videos from, well, I did get the animal videos from Marty. I believe I got this one from Marty as well.
I don't know who you are or how you even found me that day, but I am so thankful.
Excuse me, ma'am. Do you have a couple extra quarters at all?
I don't.
No, for some soap?
I just spent my last.
Oh,
I
you
could give you
did?
some soap. I don't know, whichever you want.
Yeah, no, Tide-Pod works.
Tide-Pod?
Great. Thank you so
There you
much.
go.
You can have this for helping me.
It's your shirt?
Yeah.
What
It's
is?
$500.
What is? Are you kidding me?
You're amazing. your laundry soap turn into, now you have over $23,000. Yeah.
No way. Some of my family members I haven't spoken to in a while, like they saw it and they reached out to me. I feel like I kind of got my family back.
Be a force of good. Be a force of good. All right, so these are very short, but cute.
If you catch a wild mouse in your house, you should kill them, right? Well, not in this house. This little girl had severe hypothermia. We slowly revived her in warm water. We dried her off, made her a cozy bed. A water bed? She had the shakes for a while. She was still trying to recover, but then the most amazing thing happened. She was eating the next day, all dry, fuzzy, and happy. Remember, all creatures matter.
All creatures do matter. And I am grateful that I have been influenced by people in a good way. But in terms of mice, I don't kill bugs. I don't kill mice. When I was living in Northampton, Massachusetts, I was living in a home that was across the street from a field. All the field mice during the winter would come over, and I bought the traps, the have-a-hearts. And boy, I was trapping a lot, and I would bring them to Smith College alumni restaurant, dump them in the back. Probably not a very good thing to do, but there were so many, and I would have just been doing it, every single day, several times a day. And I noticed one day I pulled one of the drawers out in my kitchen where, pretzels and things like that were. And the mice had gotten into the pretzel bag. So I decided to go and feed them in the basement. I did this at another home in Stockbridge, West Stockbridge, Massachusetts. And it did keep them pretty much in the basement, for the winter. Though I did see, when I went to get my robe and I put it on and put my hands in the pocket, there were peanuts in the pocket. And I was like, okay, you're traveling up 2 floors. But yeah, mice are not something that I can't stand when the cats get them. But yes, I am of that ilk. All creatures matter. And we do our best to avoid killing them.
gentle, Hazel. Be gentle.
Good morning, Jake. Well, good morning. Good morning, Amaru. Hey, you're not buckled in.
Good morning, Bama.
That's a job I would love, for sure. This was sent to me. These videos that you've seen were sent by Marty Lauderdale, thank you, and this one was sent by Taylor Noose.
Excuse me, do you live here? Because I don't recognize you.
Why?
First off, we have a strict policy, no unlawful entry. Now, are you visiting with someone that lives on the premises?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to need their name and apartment number.
Why?
Because you don't live here now. Answer me.
I ain't gotta answer that.
Yes, you do.
How I know you even stay here, huh?
Because I am president of the Homeowners Association. Karen grows a lot. Look it up. Now, I'm going down to the office and I'm going to check. And if you are here unlawfully, golly gee wow for you, I'm going to call the police because they're going to kick you out, sir.
Bye.
Excuse me? I am a resident. You leave.
You leave.
Oh, you are so full of kitty litter. What time does your people get back home from work? Huh?
5.
What time?
5.
Okay, I'll be back at 5.
You should check out that channel.
Excuse me, do you live here?
It's, I guess, the Rick Star. If you can see this. He narrates animals very well. Because I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. Oh, God. Whew. Man, oh, man.
Something wrong with your paw, Susan? Oh. Something wrong with your paw-y? No. Oh, it's very sore, isn't it? Yeah. Look at that. And then? It's a miracle! Drama queen.
Very cute. What is this? I've been involved in rescue. I've had very traumatized dog. Two traumatized. And there is nothing like watching them begin to trust you. In fact, animals have really been the only beings on earth that told me that I was a good person. All right. Sherry has asked me to do something, and I'm scared to do it. Why am I scared to do it? You know, she called earlier and told me what she had done. And when I looked at it, I burst into tears. Now, very often I say I'll feel like crying. I'm not a crier, but that got me. So I'm afraid it might get me again. Malignant narcissistic family. Uses money to control people. And money in my family has been used to shame, torture, abuse. I grew up in just the violence around money was intense. But I remember as a kid, and I don't know how old I was probably 7. I couldn't have been older, 7 or 8. No, I think not even 8. Definitely 7. And my mother was drunk. And I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my mother. And I was just sitting there. She had the checkbook out. And she kept pointing and like hard, on the checkbook, telling me that I was the reason why they had no money. Going on and on. I had no clue even what a checkbook was, what she was doing. She was drunk. I had to stay there. But we have no money because of you. I was the scapegoat. I was the burden. And my having to ask for help, it took me 8 years to finally just put underneath my videos if you feel like donating, I have a PayPal account. It took 8 years. It took subscribers yelling at me to do it. And I remember in South Carolina, that was a period of my feeling so traumatized by everything that my family had done as an adult, just trying to recover from the stroke and everything that was taking place, and my having to end my practice, losing everything, and as the scapegoat, they don't let you ever change, So I was still treated as if I was like 7, 8, 9 years old. Not one accomplishment. And it was pretty amazing what I had done with my life. Not one was acknowledged. I was just a horrible human being and yada, yada, yada. And I remember in South Carolina, a subscriber who became a very close friend, even just buying me a cup of coffee was hard to accept. And this period, since being here and so alone, and having gone through all of the experiences that I've gone through, getting thrown out like garbage, well, the trash aspect of my life was just reinforced. Very hard to recover from that when you see nobody. You literally are completely and utterly alone. And to have a family, every day I think about my circumstances and I'm amazed that not one person in my family cares at all about my life. Not one. And that's hard to accept. But as I went through my adult life, I had a life. It was full. It was full of an awful lot of distractions from being treated. And this has been 64 years. I mean, it has been nonstop with my family. So, and how utterly alone I have felt. And it's been just getting harder and harder to deal with being so alone and not being able to get to a place where I really need to be in order to pick myself up again. Hardly anybody calls. I see people, oh, I'm your friend and but they don't ever call. They don't ever email. You're not a friend. It's like you're just stuck in this circumstance, and then you're listening to all of these people who are telling you, how wonderful you are and how great you are and and I'm your friend and I'm... No. Look, when you come from a family like mine, you get to see other people having family. Not that they're healthy. Oh, dysfunctional. Maybe some family members don't, talk to one another. But you really get that there are people that have some semblance of family. There are people who, and I've heard this, from others, that, oh, my brother, had cancer and we never got along and we didn't even talk, but I had to show up. I had to do the right thing. I remember somebody saying that. I had to do the right thing, even if it was just for myself. I had to know that I did the right thing. My family? No. And then, of course, you get people who, and that's what happened with the main subscriber, who, oh my God, was emailing. That was pretty much our relationship, correspondence emails for years, telling me that she came from the exact same family. Her family let her go homeless, and going on, telling me stories that were not true. And it was the first time that I lived with her that I thought, holy shit. Nothing like my family. Her mother was calling, her brother was calling, her sister was calling. Every holiday she goes to visit her family. And then I learned her family didn't let her go homeless. She could have gone home to her mother's. She chose to go homeless. And she then is equating that with my experience, where I don't even hear from my family, and yeah, they will let me die. I don't understand people. I don't understand why, they can't just accept that somebody might have a different experience. They always have to merge with that experience and make it just one experience. It's called lying for whatever reason. But it's very upsetting to those who have a very different experience. And you're dealing with people who are in the bell curve, who have the socially acceptable dysfunction in their family, but they still have family. You know, I don't get it. So, yeah, I've been feeling very, 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 this is the most painful I've experienced, in feeling completely alone. No one at my back. Don't say you have my back, because clearly you don't understand what that means. So when Sherry called and asked me to pull up this, and I feel embarrassed, I feel shame, but I'm also, I broke down and cried. I promise to never let you feel alone in the world. So, Sherry did this on my behalf. I'll put the link in. You can read it. I can't read it because the tears are coming again. You know, we are good, Americans, at just throwing out words. But when the words need to be demonstrated, that's where a whole lot of us are lacking. And I will admit that considering how I've been feeling and not having a demonstration, in fact, getting thrown out here, getting thrown out there, hearing from another one that, you know, I'm too sensitive or whatever to live on her land. You know, it's like the insanity of the cyber world. When you're in need of help, and that help is essentially coming from strangers that have not really listened to you, to understand your experience, to understand your circumstances, you get an awful lot of judgment from people. And that's very hard, because when you've been judged 64 years from your own family that is supposed to love you and care about you. I know one person is identifying with what I'm saying. Hi, Jason. It's, and then also, you know, you get to hear from everybody that you're talking to or corresponding with, their life. They still have a life. They're, you know, and I don't say this, I'm afraid to say this because I don't want anybody to not, you know, share their life with me. That's not the point. But I've been pretty good at just recognizing difference, even if the other person doesn't recognize the difference, and listening to their life experience and, you know, and contributing in the conversation and yada, yada, yada. But I notice the difference all the time. Well, it's only been here that it's been very hard suddenly to hear other people's life experience, especially when most of them don't acknowledge mine. And then you get off the phone and you're like, everybody's just going on, and you are facing something that is very scary. I do want to say, and I have to say it now because I'm remembering, there's one bit of this that is not quite right in terms of the subscriber who owns this cabin. Now renting from a man who has a second home in Georgia. He has informed her that he is going to sell his main home in Florida. Okay, he told me he doesn't know what he's going to be doing. Whether he sells that home in Florida or sells this, he doesn't know. And he's going through so much with his own family. His mother has advanced dementia, so he's not sure what he's going to be doing. Do I have to leave in a week or 2 weeks? I'm sure he's going to give me 30 days. I can't imagine that he won't. But this is truly the first time that I felt, okay, help is not coming. It's not coming. And help is not just about money. So that's the scary part. That's why I've been so be a force of good. Because I know there's a lot of people out there that are scared and don't know where to turn for help. You all know it. That's why I've been so adamant about get out there and help those in your community that need help. Extend yourself, because as Americans, it's very hard to ask for help. And then you have people like me who it's so, money, I'm a burden. Money, I'm a burden. And so you don't know what somebody is going through. That's why I say extend yourself. Just put yourself out there and help them. I think I've become rather a hard ass in terms of truth because of the lies that I've lived 64 years in my family. And the lies destroyed me, destroyed my reputation, destroyed me from my own family. Now, I'm sober. I don't do drugs. I haven't had a drink in I don't know how long, but many, 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 many years. In fact, I've lived most of my adult life sober. My family knows it. But my mother is so, wow. She's quite the malignant narcissist and very skilled at keeping everybody away. She lives in Florida. I haven't seen her in, God, I don't know, 25 years. Haven't seen my sister in even longer. And my brother is her quintessential flying monkey. He's always right there to help mom do her manipulations to destroy the scapegoat, me. Do I take it personally? I stopped taking it personally decades ago. Do I feel it personally? Do I live the personal horror of this? Yes, I do. But my mother's narrative which, think about the official narrative, my mother's official narrative of me. I'm a mentally ill, violent drunk. That hurts, but you have to live it. I did not understand why I was not invited to anything at all. No weddings, nothing. Until I realized, those, well, if you've done that self-reflection and thought about your, past, and you have those, you're stopped dead in your tracks moments. I've had many of them. And I realized I can't be invited because people would see that I'm not a mentally ill drunk, violent drunk. My mother's violent. My brother's violent. So, it's a stain that I live. But I've carried on. And I was blown away. Sherry, thank you. My life became so messed up that now, in fact, there was a house that was for rent right next to Sherry and her significant other. It was too expensive, but I had corresponded with the landlord, and even though they said they would be a co-signer, the landlord wanted documentation of my income. I can't put donations down. So, but so much got messed up that the stress of everything has really left me kind of cognitively impaired. And now I'm just really tired. But Sherry, thank you very much. Very, very much. I don't like the fact that when I say be a force of good, help people that need help, that I will get comments from people who think that I'm manipulating all of you to help me. If I was good at manipulating, I would not be in this situation. I suck at it. But it is, I know what it feels like to lose everything and not have anyone. I know what it feels like. And yeah, I do. I did an awful lot of work on myself to be as healthy as I am now. Well, if you knew me prior, you'd be like, wow, okie dokie, she sure did do a lot of work to change, but that doesn't mean, I think I've become a decent person. But having done that work, and it wasn't my goal to become genuinely compassionate, because I didn't even know what that meant, right? You just talk the words. Oh, I'm compassionate. I have compassion. I care. And then you go about doing things that have nothing to do with what you just said you cared about. Well, that's not care. That's called bullshit. So, in doing that work, I'll never forget this. I was walking Main Street, Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and coming towards me was an incredibly obese woman. And I literally stopped, and I could not believe what I felt. Like, I was kind of overwhelmed. The genuine stuff is a force beyond us. It does overwhelm. And that was a woman who worked in a, can't remember the name of it, but it was, one of the gas station convenience stores. And I went in there, and two incredibly obese women worked behind the counter. One was literally huddled on the counter because she couldn't really stand up, but she was right there at the cash register, and that's what she did. And they didn't like me. I've always been very thin, and fortunately for me, my issues, my trauma was well hidden. Oh, I looked just like everybody else. But I remember walking into that convenience store, getting things, and I would make it a point to try to get that woman to look at me in the eye. And eventually she did, but when I saw her on the street, and I thought, she's carrying trauma. It's visible. You can see it. And eventually, she would talk to me. I was an attorney, employment discrimination. Her significant other was going through something and he was being screwed. But it was amazing, the transformation of walking into that store, and I could feel how much they didn't like me, to then seeing me in a grocery store, coming up and thanking me. I was no longer practicing, so there wasn't much real practical help that I could give them. But I did my best, and so, considering where I come from, I've been very fortunate, for sure. It has been very hard for me to live this social media life with so many people attacking you, claiming that you're manipulating people to get them to send donations. All I care about is money. If that were the case, why did it take me 8-9 years to finally just put underneath the videos, if you want to donate? I have real issues around money and around asking for help. So, I should really do my walk down memory lane. One of the reasons why I've not been doing what I've said that I would do. And I've said I'm going to do a Just Talking. I'm going to do, walk down YouTube memory lane. And then I end up just going right back to the news. Why? Because I know how down I am. And when you start talking about your personal experience, inevitably somebody's going to kick you when you're down. So, hey, babe. I have a breather. I have to feed my boy. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay, so, and the other thing is, I get to hear how ungrateful I am for all the help that I've received. And that's not true. That's not true at all. In fact, I've shown my gratitude in Montana. I've shown my gratitude in Maine. I've shown my gratitude in South Carolina. But the minute you get into something with somebody, then they start trashing you. So, anyway. You never know. For the good things that you've done in life, you might hear from them their thank you or the influence that you've had on them. Very often you don't. So you don't there have been people in my life that have no clue that they have influenced me in a good direction. So, reach out, extend yourself, and even my response, which I could barely talk on the phone with Sherry, she still has no idea what she's done. And the other thing is, in wanting, in needing a co-signer, I've wanted to be able to save a year's rent so that nobody would feel, worried. And I've not been able to do that. This time has been the worst in terms of my contact with people, my losing channels hasn't helped. The people, very few are donating. People yell at me to get a P.O. box. It's empty. that's not to say it's always been empty. I got some subscribers, but something has definitely happened that is so significantly different than any other time that I have been on YouTube. But it could also be that I'm losing an awful lot of people because they don't know. When you get thrown out of places, and if you don't know me, you only know me from social media, yes, I can fully understand people not knowing what to believe. That has put me in a really bad position. And it is unbelievable to me that these so-called subscribers have not done a thing to rectify, to, even when I was in these places, to pull it back. They did not care if I lived or died. It so matched my family. Well, my family would like me to die because I'm the scapegoat and I tell the truth. So my personal experience has paralleled our collective experience quite closely. That's why I'm rather passionate about it, and very passionate about lying about people. You don't do it. You don't do it. There's so much truth you could tell about me, but if it's the truth, I will not deny it. But you don't get to lie about me. Well, apparently you do. And how do you defend yourself against lies told by other people that you don't even know? That's the cyber world. You don't. You can't. You know, it's like dealing with the malignant narcissist over and over and over and over again. And yes, you know, you don't have to be pathologically narcissistic to have the tendencies. Don't I know it? Because I've had a lot of those tendencies, and I'm still today. You know, I look at my behavior, sometimes, I'm thinking about how I'm responding to people. Yeah, I have so little patience now. I'm so tired, and so I have no distractions, I have no outlet, I have nothing. And when I've said this is my world right here, the screen, I'm not exaggerating. That's it. I have no friends to go to lunch with. I have no family that calls. I have no, significant other that, I might sit down and have dinner with. Nada. And I'm here because of the cats. That's it. So, and I'm also not saying this, to play my little violin. I was going to say piano. Violin. I think it's really important to understand that when somebody says something about their dysfunctional family or their narcissistic family or a betrayal or feeling alone, or don't assume that you're living what they're living. Do not assume that your alone is what another person's alone is. Ask them. I think a whole lot of us, well, I've always loved to interview people, and taking depositions was always my most favorite part of being an attorney. I do ask questions of people, but not a whole lot do. you know. So anyway, Sherry, this meant more to me than you'll ever know. I promise to never let you feel alone in this world. Sometimes we really need to demonstrate how we care. So, I was going to do some of this. If you've not read this book, I highly recommend that you pick it up and read it. I will do that tomorrow night. And don't assume someone is okay because you see them on a screen and they're talking. Don't assume. Presumption is the worst part of a thinking pattern that one can have. And we all have to work on our thinking process. So when you start presuming things about other people, pull yourself back and ask yourself, how do I even know this about that person? Why am I making this presumption about this person? I've lived it. I'm on my 13th year of this. Wow, the presumptions would come in fast and furious. Unbelievable, so unbelievably wrong. People would leave these comments and state things definitively about my life that could not have been more false. They were lying. When you presume things about people, and generally speaking, the presumptions are usually negative, you're lying. You're lying about them. When you exaggerate things about people, you are lying about them. So it's been hard, you know. It's living a rather surreal experience. The reason why my first two channels were named Kafka Winston World was that, well, that was just, I thought I could change the name, but I couldn't change. You can't change usernames of a channel. And then people get so accustomed to the name, then you don't want to change it. But the only reason why is I had never done social media. I didn't go on Facebook. I didn't go on anything until 2010 when I came on YouTube. And I didn't even, I was like, look, what's a username? So I actually Googled username, found out, all right, so I didn't know what a name. I didn't want to use my full name, but I had books on my desk that I had just read, and they were sitting right at the corner of the screen. I had just read a biography of Kafka, Franz Kafka, and 1984 again. So I see Kafka, Winston, the main character in 1984, and well, throw it up, Kafka Winston World. Thought I could change it. Kafka. The Trial, brilliant, brilliant piece of work. Far better to read The Trial than to watch on YouTube, but you can watch it. The Trial. This surreal experience of a man who gets charged with something, but nobody will tell him what the charge is. So the whole thing is he, trying to find somebody who will tell him what he has been charged with. So as the scapegoat in my family, I have felt like Mr. K. That's the protagonist in the trial. Winston, I felt like Winston in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, just talking to people and getting their responses that were like shocking. The hostility, I was like, okay, something's going on here, but just bringing up what was going on in our country, and the party line dominates, and that's it. Those liberal Democrats. So it has been very surreal, especially what I've lived, and then coming on social media, and it's like, but yeah, this period of being completely, I know how to take care of myself when I'm in a place that I can actually work. But I haven't had that opportunity here, so I have been not wanting, to be kicked while I'm down. And I know this kind of talking, well, it's not the American way. Well, guess what? Fuck them if they can't take a joke. Thank you, Sherry, very much. Very much. And on that note, please go out and be a force of good. Live honestly, speak honestly, do things differently. Help those are in need of help. Extend yourself. Don't wait. Our lives are really coming to full-out destruction. And not getting out there and helping people. Think about your soul. And when you do that, you build up community, and people remember you. I've said this for 12 years, community is essential, trust is essential. And the only way that you can develop both is by living honestly and speaking honestly and getting out there and helping those in your community. If you're not doing that, then are you about yourself? So, I do want all of you to stay safe. It's getting pretty crazy out there. I'm worried about Californians and, all of the subscribers that I am no longer in touch with, but I've been very much in touch for a very long time with many, for years. And well, be prepared for anything. Stay safe. And on that note, ciao, guys.